Welcome to another OCD Recovery Instagram Live. I normally do these videos in my kitchen, but those backgrounds get a bit boring after a while. So as I'm on holiday, you've got a bit of a outside garden vibe going on. So I was going to talk a little bit about I was going to do a question and answers covering all your different questions relating to OCD and anxiety in general. Obviously, we cover both of those. We cover, not both, I mean, anxiety covers quite a lot of things. Generalized anxiety disorder, panic attacks, all that stuff. So, yes, if you want to ask any questions relating to anxiety, panic attacks, generalized anxiety disorder, OCD, any of that stuff, just put it in the comments below and I will cover those now. So I was going to talk a little bit about an article that we are putting up at the moment talking about the misconception around OCD. The misconception around how we look at acceptance. What tends to happen with acceptance is we very, very much get into a position instantly where certain emotions we feel that we need to cling on to. This is a famous one. We think, I must cling on to anger because anger is an emotion I don't want to get rid of. I must hold on to all my feelings. Now, learning to become more rational doesn't detract from learning to become more rational doesn't take away feelings. We can still feel. It turns down the exaggerated response. That's a key part of what Albert Ellis talks about. It turns down the exaggerated response. So if I was scared I was very, very frightened of, for example, let's look at some sort of situations where people get confused. If I was scared of making a mistake, which is a common one, okay, so I was very scared of making a mistake. That doesn't mean acceptance is agreement. So I would still be aware that I don't like making mistakes. I would prefer not to make a mistake, but at the same time, I realize that if I make a mistake, I'm a fallible human being who can make mistakes, and it's not the end of the world if I do make a mistake. Now, that doesn't mean I want to. It doesn't mean I'm agreeing with it. It means I'm making peace with even if I did make a mistake. And that's key. So that doesn't mean I'm more likely to make a mistake. The same as if I had cancer. The same as if I had cancer, I would be accepting of having cancer and would want rid of the cancer. I wouldn't want the cancer, but I could accept having it. That's key. So I think that's really important. That's a really, really important thing to focus on, to think about, because that often gets mistaken. People often make a mistake related to that. They think, oh, I'm going to lose all my feelings. This book, How to Stubbornly Refuse to Make Yourself Miserable, is going to make me lose all my feelings relating to anything. It's absolutely not that. If that was the case, Albert Ellis, who's a super, super smart guy, would have had to not write the book, but that's not the case. And all the work is coming from the Greek and Roman philosophy, the likes of Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, Seneca the Younger, all of this stuff from the past, which forms those philosophy principles, form the foundations of rational emotive behavior therapy, CBT, and all the work that Albert Ellis covers in those books. So that's really, really important to think about, because what we tend to do is when you first hear how to stubbornly refuse to make yourself miserable about anything, we initially think, that's too extreme. How can we need to be miserable? Well, why do we want to cling on to misery? might want to think about something as sad or not very helpful or really not great. But misery, why would you want to hold on to that? Same as I don't enjoy being really angry. So by being rational, I never get into a position where I'm really, really, really angry. Well, that's not to say I don't always. Sometimes I choose to be irrational. So that can happen. Maybe if I'm getting a parking ticket or something, I might let myself get angry. So those kinds of situations. So it's really looking at that and breaking that down, and that's key. Now, the reason that's so key is, like, let's take, for example, where I am at the moment. I'm on vacation, and I'm in Spain, and it's very peaceful where I am here. Now, if I was suffering with bad OCD like I did in the past, and I used to come to Spain a lot when I was suffering with OCD in the past, it wouldn't matter how peaceful the environment was, it wouldn't matter how relaxing the environment was, how much I left the thoughts there and the things to go and play out in my head, that wouldn't matter at all, because the environment wouldn't bring down that fear, because it's the same as how I often describe it. It's the same as if I was in a hot bath and someone said to me, oh, by the way, there's a burglar breaking in downstairs, just relax. Well, you couldn't relax because you know that something's happening downstairs which is quite a threat. Okay, so that's like the case. Or if there's a big tiger in the room and you're trying to relax with a tiger there, well, it's not ideal either, because you're not going to really be able to relax knowing there's a tiger there. So that's very much what OCD and anxiety is like. The big myth, and you see it a lot on social media where it's misunderstood, and it's been misunderstood since the time I was stuck with OCD, is you don't need to get into the content of the thought, which is complete nonsense. If you didn't need to get into content of the thought, we wouldn't have exposures that are targeted on specific fears, because we target with specific fears to get into the content. Otherwise, we'd just say this exposure is for all OCD. So it obviously targets that specific fear. So that's key. That's very key to get into those points. You've got to do that. And you don't need to do exposures for all fears. You don't need to do exposures for all anxiety. It's only where it's necessary, if that helps. I mean, like, for a large part of my journey, I had a position where I was really stuck with and I'd done loads of exposures, but it wouldn't release because the irrational beliefs were there and they were still latched on. And because those were latched on, it wouldn't release. So that's key. That's very, very key, because otherwise we can get very disheartened when we've done a lot of exposures. The same as I got very disheartened when I had not only done a lot of exposures, I'd done a lot of mindfulness and a lot of meditation, very helpful tools too, but it was cutting through that piece like a hot knife through butter, because it knew completely that I was still scared and it was still latched in because it was a threat. It wouldn't let me off that 0.001% because I was convinced it was a real event, not OCD, and I was also convinced that the situation, because that all the tools I was using were pointless, because if something was a real event, then why would it release? Why would I want to sort of let go of control if there is a real danger threat there? So that was a large part of it too. So those points I want you to think about. With the theory, things you're learning, you've got to ask yourself, does this sound realistic? Does this sound like reality? Back in the past, when I was struggling, I used to see lots of things that were, and still today, and a lot of our work's about that. I've just posted an article today about why thoughts are thoughts doesn't often cut it for OCD, because it's like a mantra you hear all the time. Thoughts are thoughts. Tell yourself thoughts are thoughts. It becomes bloody compulsive. You're telling yourself all the time, thoughts are thoughts, thoughts are thoughts. That's trying to convince yourself constantly, it's just OCD, it's just OCD, just OCD, and your brain's going, well, what if it's not OCD? So what you need to think about is not sort of repeating that over and over as a compulsion, being aware of that on some degree, but your brain is going to make it feel as real as it can get, like that isn't the case, this really is real. So that's why we work on adopting unconditional self-life and other acceptance to get under those core fears that are often being fueled there. And that's a key part of what Albert Ellis taught, and obviously all of these parts going back through the Greek and Roman philosophy, and you can just see its reality. It's not when people say to me, oh, but thoughts are thoughts is like the gold standard. I say, yeah, well, the gold standard isn't helping many people because most people are still stuck with OCD. So obviously isn't cutting it. So that's a key point. And I realised that a long time ago when I wasn't getting better. I wasn't getting better. I didn't care what was the gold standard. If I wasn't getting better, it wasn't working. So of course, we have to approach with exposures and distancing ourselves from thoughts. Distancing ourselves from the thoughts is key. But when something's not working, and it doesn't matter. You've got to look at what you're scared of. You've got to look at what the fear is, what the chronic anxiety is, what's there. There's no point just sitting there going, okay, I'm doing a lot of mindfulness, and I'm leaving thoughts there, and I've done a lot of exposures. I've done all the gold standard stuff, so it should be gone. If it's not gone, then obviously you're going to have to look at why you're scared and break that down, because you will know if you're feeling better. You'll know if you've got a sort of robust recovery where you're feeling a lot more better and a lot more balanced. If you're not, you'll know that. You'll feel that. I felt chronic guilt, chronic anxiety persisting all the time, so I knew that wasn't cutting it. It wouldn't release, and that's what all the work I've been doing over the last 10 years has been about. Really working towards inner peace, so that you've got inner peace in your head, in your body, that you've embodied, because your beliefs change, because you see things differently. There's no chronic anxiety response in the body because it's not held like that anymore, because there's nothing to be scared of. So it's so obvious, like so much conflicting information that I used to hear, and you still hear it today, like ridiculous statements like anyone can make themselves feel the OCD cycle just like an OCD sufferer. No, you can't. If you've not got OCD, you can't experience that exact sensation. It's like trying to say anyone can experience asthma just by sort of trying to shorten their breath a bit. Well, no, it's a different experience. It's not. You can't do that. So those points are key. If you're not feeling in inner peace, if you've still got chronic anxiety and chronic guilt, you're going to have to look at what is causing that. You're going to have to look at those fears, and it's always there. It's a fear of something. There's no OCD cycle, no generalized anxiety disorder cycle, no panic attack cycle without a fear response. Something you are scared of there, that's an exaggerated response creating that cycle. That's what it is. And I like to simplify it like that, although it's not simple. Otherwise, I wouldn't have written 3,000 plus posts on the OCD experience, and I would have just done 10 or 100, because I wouldn't need to have done that. So it's obviously not as simplistic as that, but it's not rocket science. But the actual what's happening with the cycle, that is simple. That's just a fear cycle. But changing that fear cycle is not simplistic. It takes practice and understanding to break that down so that fades out. It's a process. Just make sure I don't get bitten by too many mosquitoes here, but I can accept them biting me. I can accept that, but I don't like it. And yeah, so I think that was the main message that I wanted to cover today. Just the importance of seeing that what you're learning is not making you sort of not have feelings. It's actually making you more empathetic, makes you more creative. It makes all these things because you're more in touch. You've got more depth, the way you see things and feel things. It gives you this incredible additional depth. I mean, if it's something that, like Albert Ellis used to say, if it was taught in the schooling system, it would change the world. And that's what we try and do in the OCD community and with anxiety sufferers in general, is by trying to change that amongst everyone, so everyone can support each other and sort of empower each other with what they're learning. And that's why we built the Facebook groups and so on, so that we can do that. And you see all the time people coming in who are really struck, sharing amazing wisdom with someone else, and then helping their life and so on. And that's how you're going to change OCD, by people sort of empowering one another, not reassuring each other, teaching them what they need to, what's going to help them to recover, teaching them about their own journey, teaching them about the lowest points where they came from. All that stuff is key to the OCD recovery process, raising OCD awareness worldwide and changing OCD recovery in general. Bottom line is, look, if you're still feeling anxious and you're still feeling chronic guilt, you've got to look at why you're still feeling this. Okay, and it doesn't matter if you've been doing exposure after exposure and you've done mindfulness course after mindfulness course. If you are still stuck, you're going to have to look at that. Okay, and that's the key point, and what I wanted to highlight in today's message. Guys, great to see you all on here. I'll be back on very soon doing another Instagram Live. I hope it doesn't get too dark in this video, like my last one where I was walking down the street and it went completely black and could have easily fallen over. That wasn't the best Instagram Live I've done. Guys, great to see you all on here, and I'll be back on very soon. Take it easy, guys.